So students, let's start a new video, and in this video we will discuss about the topic consideration. Why this consideration is very much important to make an agreement as a contract or an agreement which is enforceable by law. Why this consideration is very much important. We will discuss it in detail throughout this video. So consideration means something in return. So when we discuss about the example, A agrees to give his book to B, and B in return agrees to pay rupees 1000 to A. So here we already discussed this rupees 1000 is the consideration. So we can say that the consideration is very much important element to make a contract as a valid one. So what is this consideration? So consideration is something in return. And we cannot say that the consideration should be in an amount. It could be an act or it could be a tolerance. And the other important thing is that the consideration should be mutual. Like one party giving something, A giving his book to B, and one party is getting something in return. So when A gives his book to B, A is getting rupees 1000 from B. I think it's clear, okay? And then the other condition is that this consideration should be a real one. Here rupees 1000 is a real thing or existing thing, so we can say that it's a valid consideration. And the other important area is this consideration is need not to be adequate. It's very important. This consideration, see, A promises to give his book to B. We are not considering the value of the book here. B in return paying 1000 to A. So here the value of the book doesn't matter. So that means the consideration need not to be adequate. It should have some value, but it's not necessary that it should be equal to the market value of that object. It's basically the parties actually deciding about the adequacy of the consideration. See, in the example we discussed, A in return to his book agrees to receive 1000. This is the contract between A and B. So here about the consideration, there is a mutual understanding between the parties A and B. So when these parties enter into an agreement, about the adequacy of the consideration is absolutely depends upon the parties. Even the courts normally do not inquire into the concept of whether this consideration is an adequate one, whether it has an equal value, or what is the value of the consideration. The courts will normally did not or do not entertain this concept. The court will only find out whether the parties are agreed between each other about the consideration, and did the parties get what they agreed to. This is the only aspect the court will examine. It will not go into deeper to the consideration to find out whether the value of the consideration is equal to the thing given to the other party. Now we will discuss some examples and do there is any exception. So first we will find out the example. It's a very simple example to understand very easily. Here A offers to sell his car to B for rupees 50,000 and B accepts the offer. Here the consideration is rupees 50,000 is the consideration. So there is offer or promise, and there is acceptance, and the third condition, that is consideration. Now we will move to, is there any exception? The exception is that a written and registered agreement, which is made out of natural love, is valid even if there is no consideration. It's very important. A written and a registered agreement which is made upon out of natural love is valid even if there is no consideration. The example is A. The father, out of his natural love and affection, promised ₹1,000 to his son B in writing and registers it. Here, there is no consideration because the father promised, yes, he will give ₹1,000 to his son B. In return, B is not paying anything. So, there is no consideration. But this agreement is made out of love and affection. So, there is not necessary or there is no need of the consideration to make it as a valid one. But the condition is that it should be a written and registered agreement. That condition should fulfill. It should be a written and registered agreement. Now in this context, we will discuss an Indian case. The case is Durga Prasad versus Baldio. And in this case, Durga Prasad, the plaintiff, constructed some shops in the request of district collector and rented it later. Here, the defendant, one of the shopkeeper, promised Durga Prasad that yes, he will pay 5% as commission to Durga Prasad from all the articles sold through his shop as a consideration. Why? Because the defendant realized that yes, this Durga Prasad had invested a huge amount to construct all these shops. So he, while taking the shop on rent, he agreed that yes, he will pay 5% commission on all the articles sold through this shop. Even though there was a promise, later the defendant failed to pay this commission. So Durga Prasad filed a suit to recover commission from the defendant. But what the court say? The court said that the plaintiff constructed the building on the request of the district collector and not the defendant. So there is no any legal obligation from the defendant to pay consideration to the plaintiff. Clear, student? Here the court observed that the plaintiff constructed those shops just because of the request from the district collector and not from the defendant or Baldio. So there is no any obligation to the Baldio to pay consideration to Durga Prasad as a commission.